Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly, the old salty dog John Martin, with a little bit of a raspy voice today. I hope I know I feel better than I sound, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. You can't catch anything over the airways other than, I hope, the spirit of our show, Ted.
That's right. I'm glad that you're back here, John. You must have that salty breeze in your throat from all your
It
fishing.
might be.
Yeah.
Well, how are you, my friend? I see you're back from Minnesota. You survived the Minnesota trip.
I really did. And it was funny because they were talking about the heat wave up there. And I'm like, heck, this is like a spring day for us. But, everybody gets used to what they're doing. Well, we had a great time. It's my oldest brother's 80th birthday. And we had 3 of the other brothers up there. And we floated down the Rum River in Inner Tube. Had a great time.
Now, did you leave the house to do the Rum River, or is it Rum River? I hear you.
I can't drink that dark liquor or the clear liquor. I got weaned off that early on. No, but we had a great time, and it was family time. And I was a little reluctant to go to Minnesota, but I'll have to tell you, the majority of the people I found and talked to were just good old American conservatives like I remembered in Minnesota. So, I think what we hear on the news is not always accurate. I did see the new Minnesota Somalia flag look-alike, which is disheartening. But people have to make those decisions in each of their states. And, we just hope that they maintain the values and start voting correctly to get this country back on track, John. That's our goal, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting you mentioned family values, because I heard one of my friends met me for breakfast down there when I got off the boat Sunday, and he said, "Have you heard the latest?" I said, "I just walked on shore."
Hotel.
But he was telling me that up in Minnesota now that they found out that, or there's evidence that Ilhan Omar's sister is actually in the middle of all this fraud and is one of the kingpins in it. I don't know the details. I guess they're still coming out. So other people, the family values are somewhat different in some parts of Minnesota.
Yeah, they share the wealth. They share the wealth. It's a typical Somali pirate type of deal. Share the booty.
I hear you.
Again, that's just not the culture of America. And there's too many people milking the welfare system. And, that's the whole thing that we have to do, John. We have to just kind of educate people on state, local, and federal politics. And at the bottom of all that, it goes back to our founding fathers. You can't have a constitutional republic without a populace that's educated and has virtue and high morals. You can't keep it, And those days are slipping away in some parts of the country, but we can get them back. I truly believe in our system, especially when you see when the FIFA players came over for the World Cup, how they love this country for the most part. And those are the values we all need to hang on to and cherish and make stronger in this country, because that's what sets America apart from every other country. And that's why, unlike Barack Obama, that's why America is exceptional.
Absolutely. Well, when you were saying that, it all of a sudden sparked in my head. Of course,
that's my job, John.
Do that. Well, Ronald Reagan famously said, and I'm paraphrasing, that basically freedom is only one generation away from being lost.
True.
And that is true. And we're seeing that now. But, if you think about it, the reverse then is also true, that it's only one generation away from being revitalized. And that gives me hope right there, because I believe the reverse of that is also true.
Well, we saw that with Charlie Kirk and the re-energizing of the youth coming back and the Christian values coming out. And people want that. They want certainty. They want stuff they can believe in. And that brings a sense of calm, unlike the Democrat Socialist parties of America. And I know you were going to go right into that. And I brought some stuff up, and that's where I lost my video. And I'm going to try it again. Okay. Go ahead and bring it up, and I'll let you do what you need to
Well,
do.
Ted, we talked about we've been talking about it actually, but we talked a lot about it on Friday about how the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, or whatever they're calling themselves, is taking over the Democratic Party. And we speculated a little bit then, would there be some pushback? Well, apparently there is a little bit. How effective, I do not know. But the a committee of the DNC voted to keep South Carolina as the first presidential primary for the 2028 election ahead of Nevada. And of
That's
course, New
interesting, isn't
Hampshire.
it?
Yeah, New Hampshire and Iowa have traditionally been it and all. But what are your thoughts on that? Because on the one hand, it could be a pushback. I kind of believe it when I see it, but it is an interesting development.
Well, it is, and I think it's a smart move on them because the South is not going to support a Bernie Sanders type or an AOC or a Said from Michigan, or even a Gavin Newsom. I mean, they're not going to promote somebody like that. They're too out of the mainstream and too much away from the values of America. And I think it's smart of the Democrat Party to do that, to get away from the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America. I can't even believe we talk so much about the Democrat Socialists of America. And I heard Karl Rove earlier on a podcast talking about we can't call them Democrats or socialists and communists because that's a divisive thing. Granted, he says talk about their platform and talk about what they're really promoting, and I think that's probably true. And I think the Democrat Party is come to that realization. They're just compare and contrast, and I think that's the best way to do that. But
Well,
I think that's a good move for South Carolina for them to move there.
I heard a Democratic pundit last week talking about like South Carolina and all, and I agree in general with what you were saying and what she kind of said about how well they gave us South Carolina saved us basically from Bernie Sanders was kind of her point, and she said, well, it gave us the most conservative person on the debate stage in Joe Biden, and I'm like. But Joe Biden came out literally. Now he was manipulated. They took advantage of certain situations. But keep in mind, Joe Biden during the campaign literally said that if he were elected, he would be the most progressive president in history. He
And he
said
pretty
that
much
himself.
was. I mean, he outdid Obama. Of course, it was Obama's agenda, and Obama was pulling the puppet strings. But he was. I mean, his agenda. I mean, it was crazy. Um, and so for them to go to that way, and I think the way we counter what's going on with the DSA that brought in Graham Plattner, and I know you're going to bring up Troy Jackson, is look at what they say. Go to their website and look at it. Capitalism is a system designed by the owning class to exploit the rest of us for their own profit. I don't know what that means. I mean, does you own stuff? I own stuff. I owned a business, but I didn't get born with a business. We brought that from nothing to a business, as I know so many people in America does, and that's the hallmark of America, living the American dream. That's available for anyone, but they're bashing that. Defund the police, open borders, welfare for all, Medicare for all, and Medicaid is welfare. And all you have to do is talk to people from these socialist countries, and they'll tell you how great their healthcare system is because the Democrat Socialists of America are promoting health Medicare for all, like your AOCs. But when it comes down to it, these people are paying into a system that taxes them 35 to 50%. And then if you want better health care, you get your own private insurance, and they're paying another, they're paying on the average close to 50% to 60% in money in taxes. So it's not free healthcare. They're going to pay for it. And it's just it's all in messaging, but they want to defund the police. They want open borders. They want to get rid of the jails. They want to get the new Green Deal, and these are all bad. They're just bad ideas that don't work. Capitalism's the best way to go. If you don't like it where you're not and you can't afford a house, get another job. I mean, we work 2 and 3 jobs. You heard me say over and over again. Nobody was holding us back other than our own ambition.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing, when you talk about South Carolina, and of course the Democrats openly are talking about the fact that their black voters, especially older black voters, will potentially vote more conservative, if you want to call it that, a more mainstream for a candidate and protect, so to speak, from the DSA people and all that. But the interesting thing about that is, the messaging out there, like you talked about in their platform, the DSA platform, that basically capitalism is the ownership class. See, I think they're hoping that resonates with black Americans to the extent going back to, slavery, Jim Crow, all of that kind of stuff, because they bring it up, which we know that it was the Democratic Party that brought that to them in the first place. But capitalism specifically, people need to understand, black Americans need to understand, I think a lot do, going back, starting maybe even before, but with Frederick Douglass, he believed that capitalism would actually be a freedom mechanism for African Americans, for black Americans. George Washington Carver, one of the first, he wasn't a billionaire, but he was a great inventor, and he believed highly in education and capitalism, and that people need to look these people up. And I can't remember, I think his last name is Johnson, I believe, the gentleman that started BET and
Right.
became the first black legitimate billionaire in the United States. Back when Trump was running the first time, he didn't really come out and endorse him per se, but he basically he definitely spoke up in favor of the model of capitalism that now President Trump was pushing, and downplayed and denigrated to a certain extent what the Democratic side was pushing. So black people, if you're listening out there, and I know some of you are, I'm not saying you have to agree with everything I'm saying, but if you go back and look at black leadership over time, including, by the way, Martin Luther King, they believed that capitalism was the foundation that would give freedom and prosperity to all Americans, but especially black Americans.
No, it gives opportunity. I mean, especially in a country like ours, John, that has the Constitution that protects our God-given rights. Capitalism allows people to flourish in that. And you were right. The founder of BET was founded in 1980. Get this, 1980, by Robert L. Johnson and his wife Sheila Johnson. All right, 1980, and they became billionaires in their lifetime. They weren't young when they started this. I think they're in their late 30s, early 40s. And so it's an amazing transformation of somebody's status in life, going from, being an employee in a company to starting one. The opportunity just to be able to start a company is amazing, because you can't do that in a lot of countries as easy as you can in this one. And they flourished on that. And I saw today, it was on a podcast. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I heard enough of it. It's Barack Obama out there. He's coming back to life, doing the divide in America, and how, people don't understand their history after reparations, and not reparations, but the reparations after the war, the 40 acres and a mule, what happened. And he says people need to be brought back to that and remember what happened. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And let's talk about the Ku Klux Klan and Woodrow Wilson, who was a supporter of that, who desegregated government because he thought blacks were inferior. And, Obama, instead of talking about the greatness of America and bringing people together, he's out there wanting to divide it more, because his agenda was to divide this country and bring it down. He's just, he's just pathetic in what he does. And, I hope his museum gets very few visitors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the big lie that's come out is that the Republican Party is the party of slavery, which is, wow, what a lie, because it was literally founded the opposite of that. I know I've said this before, but if I say it, it certainly bears repeating, that at the time, and you can
Please do.
hardly find this in the history books, but it's true. At the time of the Civil War, there was only one registered Republican that owned a slave. Only one in the entire nation.
Is that right? I did not know
Yeah.
that.
And you know who that was? Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh,
Ulysses
that's right.
Grant had a slave that he inherited from his aunt. He didn't even work. The slave was basically freed, but he was the only one, and he inherited it from his aunt. And think about it when they started like the NRA. The NRA was founded in part to assure, shortly after the
Right.
Civil War, that black Americans that were being freed, former slaves, would have the right to keep and bear arms because they knew they were going to damn sure need them. Excuse my language. In the South, all these things are, people are believing the big lie. The rift between black America and Republicans happened in the second civil rights thing. The first civil rights issue that was basically guaranteeing people rights, the Republicans were all behind. The second one that created the welfare state, they weren't, because a lot of them knew what was going to happen. And President Johnson, essentially, I'm not going to say exactly what he said, if we can get these people to vote for us on this, we'll have them forever, Ted.
Well,
So
have them
people
vote
need to
for us for the
understand what
next
really
200
happened.
years. Yeah, and I mean that really is the racism, and Obama was going in, and I've heard AOC did that our country and all the progressives are saying how we stole land from this country from the indigenous people. That's true. I mean, it did happen, but that was society back then. I mean, it goes on today. It's gone on throughout history, and I can only think it'll go on in the future. You look at what Putin's doing to Ukraine right now, or what China is doing in these other countries. They're taking them over. And so that's just humanity. The thing that stops that and creates some sanity is a country like ours, with a constitutional republic that protects those things. And that's why this is what worth fighting for. But again, going back to the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders and people like that, they're wanting to sell a bill of goods that is not good for this country. Nothing, you don't get anything out of life for free. Very few things that you get for free are long term, and somebody's got to pay for them eventually. And socialism, as Margaret Thatcher said, socialism works well until you run out of other people's money.
Well, you mentioned Native Americans, Indian Americans, and first of all, every country in the world, every section of the world has had one side mistreat and dominate another, and we're no exception to that. There's no doubt about that. But Native Americans have every reason to maybe hate America in that sense. They do, if you think about it, as much as anybody. But what I found when I used to do a show some years ago, started on my own, I was amazed at how many Native Americans I actually had a following of, and we still do. Our show still does. We have a lady, Bearhan, she chimes in quite frequently on our show. And I really believe, because I've talked to some of them, that one of the reasons, I'm not saying they trust government, it's just the opposite. They don't. And they believe that the best shot at not being overtaken by a government like that would be to support the Republicans. So actually, Native Americans are very patriotic in that sense because they're naturally conservative in that sense because they want to practice their faith, freedom, and all. They want to own their own land, and they want success for their families. All the things that you and I espouse to, they actually are for. So from my perspective, they may have an inner distrust of government, but if they give and decide between the communists, which is what they really are, divisive or what, and people like you and me, they're going to take you and me every time.
I would hope so. And Bearhan, if you're listening, I don't trust the government either on a lot of things. So, hang in there. We can all straighten this out together. But again, the Democrats, the socialists, DSA, socialists, we've said over and over again, socialism, people are all communists or socialists till it works, till they accomplish socialism, then they become communists. So this is just a step in that transition. And again, when you look at what they're fighting for, it's just they're whining because they're whining because they're blaming somebody for not succeeding, and they're saying somebody's holding them back. And I've had this conversation with multiple members of Congress when I was in there, and I said, "Tell me who's holding up somebody back today." And they said, "Well, the Republicans are. The government is." No, give me an example. And they can't give you an example. The only person I see is holding somebody back is usually that person. Now there are some physical attributes or, maybe handicaps and things like that or certain situations, but we've got a program to help anybody pretty much through anything there are on the government side. And so I'm ready to move on. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this and then we'll go to break. The debate over the South Carolina electoral is both electoral strategy and, according to this writer here, I'm paraphrasing from, the future ideological direction of the Democratic Party. I think that's true, but I would actually say that the debate in the Democratic Party and what we need to be paying attention to is not only an electoral strategy, but it is about the future of these United States of America and whether we even have one.
Well said. And we know if we go down the path that party wants to take us to, the Barack Obamas, the DSA candidates, we won't have the country that we grew up in to be able to pass on to our children. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we get this right. And I agree with you. It's not lost because there's another generation out there, and I think they'll fight. They'll fight to maintain the constitutional republic that we are.
Well, before we go to commercial break, I want to remind people to make the call. Call Freddie. You see that on your screen right now. Help us to educate, motivate, and activate people. Keep this ship sailing with our Captain Ted Yoho. Make that call. Call Freddie. Take us to break, Ted.
Now, we appreciate everybody watching, and we visit our sponsor, Richard Fiegel at Archer Automotive, and Joe, the team down there. They do all of your auto repairs, automotive and transmission repair, family owned, full service auto and diesel repair shop, known for ASE certified technicians. And these guys are good. I tell you, we've had several vehicles serviced there. They've got 8 bays, modern facilities, and they're open from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. And you can call for an appointment. And the number to call is 495-2485. And of course, that's the 352 area code. We'll see you after break.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
And we're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly here, the old salty dog, John Martin, and the captain of our ship, none other than the great Ted Yoho. Well, Ted, when we went to break, we were talking about a strategy within the Democratic Party about the primaries, trying to potentially push back on some of these socialist, communist ideas and that kind of thing. They're doing it mainly so they can hold on to power. But an interesting development in Maine. Bernie has come out now publicly and said that he has no regrets about endorsing Graham Plattner. Does he regret the fact that he got caught up in all that, shenanigans? Probably so. But he has no regrets on his original endorsement. And I think what's happening in Maine is very interesting. So Bernie defended his decision to support former Maine Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner, saying he does not regret endorsing him. Does that surprise you, Ted?
No, not at all. They never regret. They just have no conscience, I guess. For him to go around and espouse and bash this country the way he does, but lives a life of leisure and like an elite in this country, he's just I don't know. It's a nice. I don't want to say a nice word about him. I don't think he has purpose in our government. He's not working to make this country stronger. He's dividing this country more, and it's all for personal gain. He can't believe the stuff he does, but he's sold enough. He's been a Pied Piper to enough young people that follow him and believe this garbage. Again, how many homes does he own? 3 or 4, and it tells everybody how the system is rigged against the poor people.
Yeah, what's always amazed me, and it's you cut across the board from this Hassan Piker guy we talked about before, all the way up to the senior guy here and Bernie Sanders. I mean, they are living the capitalist dream. That's
Oh
what is
yeah,
amazing to me. They're living the capitalist dream. I mean, Bernie never has really had a job. People don't really realize his wife has, but he never had. Bernie, when he first got elected to office, was couch surfing with friends. Okay. And now he owns at least 5 houses, is a multi-millionaire himself, flies private jets everywhere he goes. He's the exact opposite of what he preaches. And
he
you know,
sure is.
but they're all like that. Obamas, look at the Obamas. They went from being kind of okay, well to do in a sense, upper middle class, maybe small millionaires in their day, to like multimillionaires who have a $500 million deal with Netflix. See, the reason I knew that Michelle was not going to run is because they weren't about to give that up. And if you
Yeah,
look at who the Obamas hang with, it ain't the poor. It ain't the average folks like me or you, Ted. They loved, even when Obama was president, he wanted to hang out with the Donald Trumps of the world.
yeah,
They
yeah.
went out of their way to do that. So these people say one thing and do just the opposite. All
You
of them.
know, I voted for Jimmy Carter and regretted that, but Jimmy stayed true. President Carter stayed true to his beliefs. He started Habitat for Humanity. He was out there giving back. He did that, and Obama, he's not going to do that. You got to get your hands dirty, and he's just a race baiter and wants to divide this country for the purpose of his legacy. Um, the fundamental transformation of America. He wants that. He wants that moniker that says he's the one that changed America. And he's got these people like the people that are running for government, and they're doing all this. But who's focusing on the major problems of the country? We brought this up a lot of times when I was out. I kept bringing it up because they want to do all these programs in foreign assistance. I said, need I remind you that we're $40+ trillion in debt, and we're spending over $1 trillion a year in interest to service that debt. And we could go on and on and on, but I think you guys know where we're at. Who's focusing on that? Is Obama doing that? Is Bernie Sanders doing that? Or are they blaming the billionaires? And a lot of that debt comes from social programs that we keep throwing money at, and not just here, but the foreign assistance programs, which can be argued is less than 3% of the total budget we're spending. But we've got some bigger problems to solve than trying to become a socialist nation. Let me know a socialist nation that ever defended itself and won in a conflict.
When the wall fell, which way did they run in Germany? I mean, that pretty much says
I
it.
mean, yeah, and they want to lead us into that. I don't think so. You people need to wake up. It's just they use it for fodder to go up and gin up people so that they'll vote their way. But in the meantime, it's destroying the very thing that they allows them to have free speech like that. I mean, these people are just phonies.
Well, Ted, I want to give you an official forgiveness for voting for Jimmy Carter. I probably would have too. I was too young to do that then. But
Well, he was a farmer.
But here's the thing about Jimmy Carter. He might be one of the finest people to ever be president of the United States.
Individual.
As an individual. But he was up until Biden, which saved him from this moniker, he was the worst president we've ever had. So the two don't necessarily go together. But Jimmy Carter was a great man. He was the best ex-president we probably ever had and may ever have.
And he was until he started weighing in and on the Trump thing. You had your time, you did what you could, you lost, move on, have a nice life. And that's what I hope, Obama should do, but he can't stand it because his legacy of fundamentally transforming America is gone. So, anyways, here we are, and we've got the elections coming up, and people are going to have to make a choice. You can get left wingers in there that wanted to fund the police, open borders, the Green New Deal, the list goes on. Get rid of the prison system. Don't prosecute anybody that does shoplifting or minor murders. I'll say because they want to release these people on because it wasn't their fault, so they want to release them from prison. And we've got to make some decisions here. We have got to have leaders that are going to lead this country and have an awakening and an adult talk with the American people. Say, folks, we need to pull together here because I can tell you right now, Xi Jinping's already had that talk with his people. And So we need to prepare this country for harder times. Austerity measures are coming, and they started with those. Let's go after programs that people don't really care about. Over half the Americans want to see gone, and so they
Well,
went
Ted,
after the foreign assistance. Yeah,
we
you're
had
smiling.
what we need is more politicians like Grady Judd. I just saw this morning, and it was too late to incorporate in the show. But I don't know if you saw the latest from Grady, but you got to check it out. So great, they had this basketball tournament down in Lakeland, right? And it was high school basketball players from all over different parts, mostly the southeast and stuff. But one team from DC, now they were all black, including the coaches and everything else. This will all make sense in a second. They were up at like 4 o'clock in the
Excuse
morning.
me.
They were up at
Yeah.
like 4 o'clock in the morning, and they were hungry, they said. So they went to a local 7-Eleven and they stole a bunch of stuff.
No,
And
did they really?
quite a few of them got caught, but two of them was absconded, right? So they had video on them. So they went to the coach of the team, and who happens to be a counselor at a youth detention center in the Maryland area, and asked him if he recognized these two, and he said, "No, I don't know what in the bottom." Right. Well, then they put this video out. The mom of one of the two, who was traveling with the team, came up and said, "Yes, that is my son." She turned him in, and she was horrified by it. Anyway, they caught the two guys. Now they're prosecuting the coach as well with multiple charges, aiding and abetting, something about neglect of youth, all kind of stuff. But then Sheriff Grady looked right in the camera and held up their mug shots or whatever, because I guess they were over 18. And he said, "You come to Polk County and you commit a crime, you will get a commemorative mug shot to take home with you." I mean, that's what we got to have. But I really applaud that mom. That mom is the cornerstone, the backbone of this country, in my opinion.
It really is. And it goes back to family values, holding people accountable. And Grady Judd's absolutely right. And it comes down to rule of law. Right from wrong, good from evil. And people need to be held accountable. And it doesn't need to be drawn out and counseling and all that. You did the crime, do the time. We've gotten away from that. And we can't go on this way. I'll tell you that right now, John. I mean, the borders are closed. Very few people are getting in that we know of. And now it's just going through the mess of cleaning that up. And we need to deal with our internal struggles here as a country, but we can't drop focus on what's going on around the world, because there are people out there. They want to see America fail, but they want to be the leaders of the world and set new standards. And we don't want that, because that is China right now is the one that's wanting to do that. And so all this chatter and all this stuff about these campaigns going on, it's very important because it's about electing the proper people to be in there. But we need to really, really focus on where this country is going and
Absolutely.
have a program to get this country under debt. And we've talked about this before. If you're broke, you lose options of what you can do, especially when you come into hard times. In our own household, if you're broke and your air conditioner goes out, or your transmission goes out, then you've got really tough challenges. And that's where our country is. And so we need to fix those internal problems.
Well, my mom always used to say, "Miscellaneous will kill you." Because when you think that that you got everything taken care of, the washing machine breaks or something.
That must be why your dad, Sid, was so effective, because of his wife, your mom.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But it's true, really. It's simple, but it's true even for a nation. You can plan for all kind of stuff, but miscellaneous stuff happens. A skirmish happens over here, a storm over there, whatever. You got to be able to deal with it. And being broke ain't no joke, as they say. So you can't do it. So you're absolutely right about that. It's fundamental basics. But talk about, we were talking about, and you're spot on your point, that we need to focus on what's happening around us in the country and the world. But part of that is who becomes like senator, who controls the Senate and stuff like that. And so Bernie has come out and said he doesn't regret endorsing Plattner and thrown his total support behind this fella named Troy Jackson. Troy Jackson won this, whatever you want to call it, primary they had with delegates in Maine this past week. And he is going to be the Senate candidate on the Democratic side. Now, this guy is an interesting mix in himself, Ted. He's going to be taking on Susan Collins. But check this out, and I'll turn it back to you. Jackson used to be a Republican. When he was first elected to office, he was a Republican, and he was a conservative. Listen to this right here. This is unreal. So Jackson received a 100% rating from the Maine Right to Life in both 2003 and 2010. In 2012, Project Vote Smart questionnaire, Jackson said abortion should be generally illegal except in cases of rape, incest, and the health of the mother. And he indicated that public funds should never be used. Okay, that was his position then. Now he has received a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood. I understand how you could go from pro-abortion to changing your mind that maybe it's not the right thing. Maybe you had a religious experience, whatever. But how do you go from being 100% opposed to abortion, considering it basically murder, no public funds, to now you get a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood? It's unbelievable.
I think up in Maine, they do a lot of hunting. He might have been in a tree stand and fell out and hit his head. I don't know how you go that in a 14-year period of time, or maybe he was doing snowshoes across the frozen lake and fell in and got brain damage. To me, and I've seen some clips of him and some stories about him. Here's a guy that's been in politics a long time, even though he totes that he's from a lumberjack family in the lumber business. Sounds like he's had a very privileged life, and he's very argumentative. And I think the Republican Party, by the sounds of it, got tired of him. So he went to the left, and then now he's going further left. And so this is a guy that just wants to be in politics. He wants to think he has an influence. They like the political life. They like the accolades that come with that. And these are candidates that will change their opinion depending on how the wind blows. We've seen too many of these people. These are the Eric Swalwells, the Plattners. They'll tell you anything you want to hear to get elected. And these are people that you just can't build a nation on or maintain a nation on these kind of people because they're going to be self-serving.
Well, Ted, you mentioned about seeking office. He's just got to have an office. I've been down in St. Pete off and on about every weekend lately. And now I'm watching commercials for Charlie Crist. Charlie Crist is running.
What's he running for?
He's running for mayor of St. Petersburg.
Well, on the Republican side, Mark Sanford from Carolina is running for governor. No, he's running for Senate. He's running for something. And this guy, he was the governor. Then he was the one that had the affair with the lady from South America. I met her, very pretty woman, but he was married at the time. And then he was
on the Appalachian Trail, Ted. Come on.
Well, yeah. And then he was in Congress with me, and nice guy, but golly, the writing's on the wall. Go get a job.
The thing, I don't normally say something like this, but if you're listening and you're in St. Pete, I know nothing about your current mayor, the election, or whether it's incumbent or any of that stuff. If you're voting for Charlie Crist, you're just voting for a dude who's looking for a job for some reason. I mean, give me a break. It's just, please do yourself a favor. Anyone but Charlie, but I'm just saying.
Well, that's the way David Jolly is that's running for governor. He was a Democrat, and he was a lobbyist, and he was a Republican. Now he's a Democrat again. These people are just going from job to job, like Andrew Gillum. That guy almost won the governor of Florida, and we see what popped up after, thank God he didn't get elected. And so there's got to be somebody better. But then you think of New York. Who are the candidates in New York? Andrew Cuomo, give me a break. And then the guy with the red beret walking around. I mean, are those the very best people you have to put up there? And I can understand why people don't want to put their face in the blades of the fan, because it is a nasty business. But I admire anybody that gets in there and runs for the right reason. These people like Plattner and the AOCs, they get auditioned and invited in to see if they can articulate a message, if they can be used as a useful idiot to get their message out of a bigger cause that's behind them that you don't see the workings of that. And that would be the DSA, the George Soros, or the people that really want to destroy America. And they use these people as useful idiots. They really do. I've seen them, I've watched them in Congress. Go back and look at their records. What have they accomplished? And it's on
Well,
both sides, Republicans and Democrats.
Well, Ted, we were talking a minute or two ago about abortion and how this guy's changed his stance, is Troy Jackson. I want to play a video.
Before you do that, people of Maine, do not vote for Troy Jackson. He is not going to lead you where you want to go. He's just going to make it worse and worse and divide your state and country more. Susan Collins, you may not like her, but she is steady, and she is probably one of the bigger pushbacks against Trump. If you don't like Trump, she's probably one of the ones that helps keep him in line. So, Maine, wake up. You can do better than Troy Jackson.
Well,
actually, Troy Jackson's like the third runner-up they're going to nominate.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a story just broke today about him, Ted, that I don't know the details, so I'm not going to be very specific about it. But apparently, during some type of debate he was having, I don't know how long ago, with a woman in public, he took a water bottle and threw it at her head.
Yeah.
Because he was pissed off about something she was saying. And apparently there's video on all it, and it's all going to come out. I don't know about that, but that's what was reported on the news this morning.
Yeah.
We'll see. Be careful what you're doing up there. But, when it comes to this abortion issue, I want to play this video because this one here I can understand people having, like, I didn't have strong beliefs in abortion one way or another growing up. It wasn't my business. I wasn't married. I wasn't a baby daddy, none of that kind of stuff. So I kind of thought, well, it's up to the woman. I didn't have strong opinions about it. But the Democratic Party pushed me so far on that issue that I had to take a stance. And basically, and I dealt with a lot of abortions when I worked at the drug treatment center. I had to escort women to have them. And I'll tell you this, I've never seen, I'm not saying they don't exist, but I have never known a woman that had an abortion that celebrated it, that thought it was happy. It was always a sad time for them, at least in my experience with the women that I took from the treatment center and stuff like that. But this is the former governor of Virginia, and he's a doctor, by the way, talking about abortion on a radio show. Check this out, and we'll come back and talk about it.
So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So
you have it, a former governor, and I think he was still governor at that time, not running for re-election. And he literally says that if the baby is born, in other words, it actually comes out, we would resuscitate it, give it whatever. And then, Ted, what really stands out to me is this, then we would have a discussion on what to do next. So the baby is alive on the operating table, and you're going to have a discussion about whether to kill it or not. Who are you going to include in this discussion? The janitor who's sweeping the floor? I mean, who's going to make the decision to kill this child that is not a debate, is a living, breathing human being, and you're going to have a discussion about it? And this guy's considered a moderate at that time.
Yeah.
That's what changed my mind on abortion, stuff like that, Ted.
Well, yeah, we heard all that, doing abortions up through the 9th month, even if the baby was alive, they would kill it. It just shows you how far these people have strayed from their humanity beliefs. These things, they're just wrong. It's the same thing. I mean, you can do it with the transgender things, doing all this mutilation of people, or the forced organ harvesting in China. These things go against human nature. and they're just wrong. Wrong is wrong, John. You can't get by that.
Absolutely. Well, in this interview, we're talking about Bernie Sanders, where he's come out and endorsed what Troy Jackson. He emphasized some themes in that. The reason why, because basically winning is all that matters to him. But his basic thing is that Troy Jackson, like Graham Plattner, we don't know what he would have done, would be reducing income and wealth inequality, which we talked about that. Basically, it means to me, my translation of that is everybody is equally poor, and that's the solution.
Yeah, I want to know how they're going to do that. How are they going to adjust that so that the wealth inequality? Give me a break. Wealth inequality comes a lot of times. It just comes down to the individual. I choose not to be broke anymore, and so I got tired of being broke, and so we went out and worked. Carolyn and I went out and worked, and nobody held us back. And it's the same thing out there. But they want to have a government program. You look at the government programs out there already. You look at the amount of unemployed males in this country, it is high. But then you look at people with disabilities, things like that. But when it comes down to the ABODs, able-bodied adults that don't want to participate in the working pool, it is a very high number. It's like 7% of that group, and they just don't want to work. And and so Bernie wants to make everybody like that because they're all either on the dark economy where they're not paying taxes, working under the table, or they're getting the food stamps, the housing, and all these other things. And God forbid they have any kids, because they're all those kids. 3/4 of those kids will be in some kind of learning disability class, so they get more money. And it's a scam, and it's not American to do that. I mean, I don't know how we got to that point where there's always going to be slackers like that. There's always been, I guess there always will be, but we shouldn't subsidize them.
Absolutely. Well, Bernie, one of the things he's promoting is saying that Troy Jackson is for, similar to Graham Plattner, besides throwing bottles at women or whatever, is that he says promoting working class populism. I don't even know what the heck that means, but but
that means
what does that mean?
He wants them
working class.
He wants to promote it because he wants to be the populist candidate. Again, well, you start dissecting some of their words, it's like, what in the heck's that mean? So good luck, Bernie. I hope your days in politics are numbered.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, you hear people talk about, like, how do you make a small fortune? Start with a big one, because most people that are born into a bunch of money don't necessarily accomplish much at all. Because the people that I personally know that are quite wealthy, I actually do know one or two that are now billionaires, but people who are multi-millionaires, all of them literally started working out of the back of their truck kind of thing and worked their way up. I don't know a single person that was really bestowed with a ton of money and just turned that into bigger money. It doesn't normally happen, usually the opposite. So I don't know what they mean by that working class populism. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't either. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I think that means everybody's working. Everybody's going to work, and we're all going to get paid the same. And that's not even socialism. That's communism.
So I want to play one more quick video. This was Joy Reid back before this primary took place, and she put out a warning to them about if they didn't get a Plattner type, what to do. I want to play this real quick, and we'll because I think you should take her word up on it, Ted. I think they should do exactly what she said.
Yeah.
Progressives picked Plattner. So you need to replace him with somebody who is ideologically the same, because that is what was decided. The people of Maine, the Democratic voters of Maine said, we want a progressive. They did not say they want an APAC moderate. So the Democratic Party in Maine ought to pick someone who is ideologically the same or ideologically similar as Plattner. If you don't, and the DNC shoves an APAC candidate down your throat, you have my permission and I'll vote for them. Because the Democratic Party needs to learn that it is not vote blue no matter who. It matters who. They sometimes need to lose in order to learn. Sometimes when you lose, you learn. And I'm just telling you right now, if they put a little APAC send Israel all the bombs, give Saudi Arabia all the money, let the UAE run over us and give Trump another plane. If they put another AIPAC sellout moderate in place of Graham Plattner, and they do not put somebody in who is his same ideology, you have my permission to stay your ass home. Then they will learn when Susan Collins gets 6 more years. At this point, we have to teach Democrats. We need to instruct them and teach them how to treat us. It's like being in a relationship. You got to teach people how to treat your ass.
You know, the good thing about it is 6 more years, if she gets in, she might go the way of Mitch McConnell.
She'll be glitching and freezing.
I can't believe I'm saying this, Ted, but I think that the Bernie bros out there and all the people out there that were going to vote for Plattner should do exactly what Joy Reid said come November.
I do too. You know, I think she said, stay home, you know, and I think that's a good thing. And we'll give you the incorrect date to go out and vote. Of course, the Democrats, they can vote all year long, it looks like.
So we only got a few minutes, about 5 or 6 minutes in the show left, but I want to ask you a couple questions here, Ted, because we've been talking about the strategy in the Democratic Party and what they're doing. But, you know, it got me to thinking, what should the Republican strategy be? Because it doesn't really seem like they have one. I know the president, of course, he's caught up with Iran. What a big distraction that is. And I'm not downplaying anything that's happening there, but it's definitely tarnishing everything. But it doesn't sound like the Republican Party, the Senate and the House, really have a strategy that I can understand right now. Because, for instance, they should be talking about the economy, but it's hard to do that. You know, is there time to even get inflation down, gas prices down, all that? Because maybe there would have been if we'd have had it by the 4th of July. But I don't know if they're going to have a strategy that can overcome what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 months that we even can know of.
I think the biggest thing is to show unity within the party and a direction they're going. You're not going to get inflation under control, John, because it's cooked into the way things are made. Oil prices high now will bring everything up higher a year from now, you know, including your vegetables to your beef. You know, I talked to you before about one of my farmer clients that reached out to me in January, and they were paying $15,000 every 2 weeks to irrigate their crops that they were growing, winter crops. And that was back, and now the prices are up again. So those things are going to be cooked into the market. And when those things come to harvest, cattle are going to be the same way. There's fewer people growing cattle or ranching, and the prices are going to go up higher. So regardless of what they do, the Republicans, they're not going to change inflation a year from now. It's already cooked into the society or into the economy. What they need to do is have a direction and say, we're doing this. Pass the SAVE Act, the DSA, or the pushback against the the wokeism and all that stuff. But they need to go out and explain the NDAA. You know, I'm getting a lot of calls from people how we've turned over our military to the control of Israelis. And no, we haven't. And we're doing interoperability so that our militaries can work together. So one command here will be understood over here, but we stay in command of that, just like we do with South Korea and Japan and the NATO allies. We have interoperability, but people are saying that this is, we've turned and ceded everything to Israel. It's not true. And so they need to get that message out, and they need to get the message out about, sticking together as America and uniting this country as the pluribus unum that we are, one nation under God, one nation, one nation. Help me here, John.
One nation under God,
one nation under, e pluribus unum. Out of many come one.
Out of the many, one.
That's Absolutely. Right. I knew it would come to me. Well, but that's jet lag.
That's okay. One of my basic thing with the Republicans, they the short time they have, because time is really ticking. I don't think they can do, like we were saying, get inflation under control. It could come down somewhat dramatically. Gas prices certainly could, but I think they have to be real honest with the American people.
You think?
And point out what was happening under Biden and what will come back on steroids under them, like the border. They need to talk about that and crime and basics and economy and the taxes and literally compare use that DSA platform, that kind of thing. This is what the Democrats are talking about. Take them at their word. This is what's going to happen if they come back in, and compare those two. They've got to draw a clear line in the sand comparison, I think.
No, I think you're right. I think that's a good thing. And, compare them to the DSA platform or what the Democrats are doing. The Democrats, they don't know what they stand for anymore because they've been taken over by the DSA and the other people like that. And I think you're absolutely right. He ran on closing the border. He did. Now let's get the mess cleaned up that they created. We've got these welfare fraud going on. He's done a good job exposing that. And now let's get that cleaned up and maybe put it on an AI system to where it is run as efficiently as it can, and the distribution of that. And you're going to get rid of a lot of the fraud in that. And it goes back to voter ID for campaigns. And I was thinking about this. Everybody says it's racist, but correct me if I'm wrong. If you go in to buy cigarettes or alcohol or even pseudoephedrine, you have got to show an ID. Pseudoephedrine is it's used to be an over-the-counter cold medicine, but in order to get it now, because people have abused that, you've got to show an ID. So, these are the things that the Republicans need to keep marching on because they make sense and they'll make this country stronger overall.
You got to show an ID to get into Obama's new library or whatever. So,
or go to a Democratic fundraiser.
Absolutely. But I think another thing that the Republicans have to do is look at what they did in Pennsylvania when Trump won Pennsylvania. And I can't remember the guy's name, but they need to really focus on organization and turnout in key areas, key races and stuff like that.
That's the critical thing right now. It really
absolutely
is.
And they talk about the big money advantage that the Republicans have compared to the Democrats. Instead of doing all these glossy ads, and I'm not saying they shouldn't do some, but they really need to get organized tightly, because if the Democrats and the DSA win, that's how they're going to win, by being extremely organized on the local level. That's what the Republicans overall have not done a good job in the past, but they need to do so now. That's how, quite honestly, Ted, you got where you were in
Congress. It is,
Congress.
absolutely.
Your ideas were great. You're great, but it was the organization of people that worked behind you, because I knew a lot of them personally. That's what propelled you to victory.
It really is, and we appreciated everybody doing that. Appreciate you saying that. And that's the thing the DSA has. They have that energy, that enthusiasm behind their candidates. Let's just pray that it's not enough to do the whole nation that way. But Obama had that. He was great at doing that. He had ginned up the people where they had believed in what he said, hope and change. And we see the disaster of that. And that's what the Republicans really have to do right now. And when you're in the middle of the fight or getting towards the goal line, that's where you really have to pour it on and really put in the effort. You cannot back off. You cannot think negative thoughts. We're going to win this. And we're going to do it this way. And that's why the people out here listening, get involved in your local races with candidates. Promote the candidate you want for whatever office they're running, if their beliefs align with yours. I can't tell you how important that is, and you brought it up. We wouldn't have won our election if there wasn't a grassroots organization of people that were passionate about the message that we had, and we are very blessed with that. So that's what it'll take. It can happen. We did it, and it can happen again. We can't go back to what Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, the AOCs, the Bernie Sanders want to bring to America. It's not going to be good for the future. And think of America under their control facing Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin. These are not games we're playing. This is for the survival of this country, but more importantly, of the Western ideologies that have created what we have and have given freedom to so many people around the world. That's what's at stake.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to let that be the last word. I would just tell everybody to like what we're doing, share what we're doing, call Freddie, support our people who support us, like Archer Automotive. Our show is now on live every Monday and Friday at noon. Spread the word. Peace out, everybody.
You guys take care and visit Archer Automotive. We are a premier diesel service facility specializing in Power Stroke and Cummins Duramax diagnosis and repair. Call for an appointment at 352-495-2485. See you on Friday.
Absolutely.